Good morning and a warm welcome to A View from the Houses of Parliament. I'm Lukhanyo Thalata and we are coming to you live from our parliamentary studios in the mother city. In our program today, we look at yesterday's deliberations on the state of the detective branch of the South African Police Service. The Detective Dialogue was called by the Portfolio Committee on Police and followed on the declaration which marks 2012 as the year of the detective. The acting chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Annelize Van Wyk, told View yesterday morning that through this dialogue, the committee was in fact seeking ways and means to assist the country's detectives. And according to presentations during the dialogue on Wednesday, it seems it was long overdue.
Currently, the granted number is 19,537, 20,985. Yet, we still do not know how the 26,736 have been derived at. Furthermore, you will hear from the Public Service Commission report that those figures do not necessarily correlate with the situation at station level. In terms of training, we know that all those in detective services have not been fully trained yet. As a committee, we are concerned about the role of training, especially when you at station level find that a branch or group commander sometimes still need to complete their own training. We would not like to see that we chase numbers at the cost of the quality of the detectives. Training, retraining and relevant training of our detectives are paramount to ensure that we have a detective service that is both relevant and professional. Resourcing of detectives, especially in terms of vehicles over the years, improved dramatically, and we now stand at a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 detectives per 1 vehicle. But when we look at computer equipment available to detectives, cell phones, and technology in general, it remains a challenge.
Ms. Van Wyk said new ways should also be found on how to recruit the correct people. Those detectives, she said, also needed to be well trained and efforts should be made to keep them in the service.
Are we getting the right people into the detective environment? And how can we make sure that we recruit the correct people and that we retain them once they are fully trained? Research conducted amongst detectives who left the service indicated that many of them say that financially they are worse off outside the service. But that detective services are sometimes within SABs treated as inferior and not as real police officers. With your assistance, we want to get to answers that will address these and many other issues as they pertain to the detective environment. It is a strong belief of the Portfolio Committee that while we have grown the numbers of the South African Police Service over the last couple of years, we have not been given equal attention to the numbers and challenges of the detective environment. The Criminal Record Centre and Forensic Science Laboratory in the same way.
Senior Detective Warrant Officer Gladstone Casper took the delegates through a day in the life of a detective. He said some of the major challenges facing detectives was the language barrier, which makes it difficult to process statements on crime scenes.
That is one of the big challenges. And then it's the poor statement taking by the first respondent, especially to serious crime scenes. Because sometimes the statement that's obtained is not the true reflection of crime. And that is the only time that you find out is that when this case is court-driven already, and then it's too late to take that retake that statement. Other problem the detectives face is that the element of intimidation, gangsters who intimidate witnesses who don't want to come testify in our cases, people who've been enrolled in the witness protection programs, leave the program because cases has been too long on the roll, out of their own accord.
Warrant Officer Casper said other challenges included corruption within the ranks of SAPS members, the scarce skills allowance, overtime remuneration, and a clothing allowance for detectives. He also had some suggestions on how to solve these challenges.
Suggestions is that 2 official languages are English and Afrikaans. And basic language courses are to be offered to empower detectives, because on a daily basis we meet with people who don't understand English or Afrikaans or vice versa. And that all VISPOL members should undergo, if I speak about VISPOL members, is the uniform branch, should undergo a 2-week crime scene management course because they are normally the first people who attend to that scene. And by the time when the detective arrives there, then you don't have a scene.
Phumelela Nzimande of the Public Service Commission said 70% of police stations did not have sufficient detectives. Poor career prospects also led many detectives to seek transfer to the uniform branch. Ms. Nzimande said research by the Commission and inspections at police stations had revealed that some detectives had never been trained for the work they do, in spite of a training course being available.
In interacting with detective officers, we also found that they felt strongly that it is important to go, while it is important to go through this course, just going through this course alone is not enough. There should be more opportunities of upskilling, and these were very limited, we found. Of about 25,000 detecting officers, 4,845 had not been trained on the detective learning program. Thirdly, in line police stations, DOs were not adequately trained on the use of computer programs related to detective services. Only one from a police station can attend training courses in 3-month cycle, making catching up in terms of training everybody else almost difficult. This contributes to low detection rate and comprises successful and in terms of successful prosecution of suspects.
With regard to the availability of resources, Ms. Nzimande said the Commission found that a resource allocation guide does exist, but that this guideline document was often disregarded, leaving many police stations ineffective.
Due to budgetary constraints, resources were not allocated according to the resource allocation guide in police stations. In that respect, we found 70% of the stations did not have sufficient detective officers. There was a lack of career progression, which led to DOs pursuing careers in other units of the police department. Thirdly, we found that 48.5% of the police stations did not have sufficient computers. In some police stations, computers were still in boxes though, or those that were not in boxes were not linked to the main frame, which is meant to allow, give an IT framework for detectives to do their work. We also found that 24% of the police stations did not have sufficient vehicles. In terms of the resource allocation guide, there's supposed to be 1 vehicle per 2 detectives. Allocated vehicles did not suit the terrain of the police stations, meaning some in those rural areas, they did not have the adequate suitable vehicles to be able to navigate those terrains. And crime scenes were therefore sometimes reached after 2 hours drive, and often evidence had been tampered with by the time.
We continue our coverage of Parliament's Detective Dialogue after the break. Don't go away.